Trying to catch up with Avengers Endgame in 3 films, Zack Snyder not only confronted the Justice League with its most powerful enemy without even taking the time to introduce the DC Universe, he also imposed his premature climax on us without even taking time to introduce the characters within the Justice League. The result? Flash finally has his own film as the DCEU is 10 years old and dying, and DC is taking the opportunity to do what DC knows how to do best: turn the spotlight on Batman. The video you are watching is therefore, at the request of several people on this channel, part of the series of video essays that I produced on Batman last year. But first, let's talk about Flash. Flash is one of my favorite superheroes. I first met him in the TV series from the 90s starring John Wesley Shipp, who would later play Flash's father in the CW-produced series, before meeting him in the Superman animated series, the Justice League animated series, and of course in the comics themselves. Unlike Superman, Flash only has one power, one that Superman also has, but that he doesn't use as inventively as Flash.
Bravo. Bravo.
But how did...
I just vibrated my body till I melted through.
Superman can fly around the entire planet in the blink of an eye.
Dude, if we're going by a pure foot race, Supes would get dusted by the Flash.
Well, why would the Man of Steel agree to a sodding foot race?
For charity? And Flash would totally win, because he can, like, vibrate through walls and stuff.
Ooh, vibration. Whatever would Superman do if he came up against a wall?
Thanks to his super speed, Flash runs on the water, passes through walls, travels through time, can memorize an entire library in a second, create tornadoes, and sometimes even consider all the potential consequences of an action.
How'd you get out?
I sped up my heartbeat till it looked like it flatlined.
I didn't know you could do that.
Neither did I.
He probably has the best gallery of DC adversaries after Batman, and it's through his character that DC initiated its multiverse. Because yes, Flash has a complicated history. Indeed, the Flash who was created at the same time as Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, that is to say Jay Garrick, is not the one I am referring here and to which we generally refer to when we talk about Flash today. That is
Barry Allen. The Flash.
In 1956, at the start of what in the comic world was called the Silver Age, Julius Schwartz reinvented the Flash from the Golden Age just as he would reinvent Green Lantern 3 years later, and it's still those versions of Flash and Green Lantern which are popular these days. But that's not all. In 1985, during the crisis on Infinite Earths that kickstarted Modern Age, Flash sacrificed himself to save the multiverse. His death preceded Superman's by almost 10 years, and unlike Superman who will be resurrected the following year, Barry Allen remained dead until 2009. During this time, it was his sidekick Wally West who put on the yellow boots to become the Flash of the Modern Age and of the Justice League. Since Wally West was younger and funnier than his predecessor, it naturally led the writers to use his character as a comic relief within the Justice League.
Hey, I had to go, okay? And there are some things I just can't do in the blink of an eye.
A habit that was picked up by Zack Snyder and Joss Whedon in the DCEU films, when in fact their Flash is supposed to be Barry Allen and therefore look more like the CW's Flash. Are you following me so far? Basically, what I'm trying to say is that I really like Flash. Not Jay Garrick's original Flash, but Barry Allen's Flash. But not Barry Allen written by people who confuse him and Wally West. The Flash I like is the one Geoff Johns brought back to life in 2009. At that time, Geoff Johns was the superstar of DC Comics. He who made his marks on superheroes of smaller caliber had just brought Hal Jordan back to life after a 10-year absence and had demonstrated more than once his talent for not only patching up the mythology of a character around a specific theme, but his ability to expand this mythology in a way that is both coherent and intriguing. His New Krypton saga is a beautiful mess reminiscent of the third Pirates of the Caribbean. Green Lantern's universe can hardly do anymore without the other colors introduced by Geoff Johns, and as we will soon see, Flashpoint constitutes about the only Flash adventure that DC wants to tell us. Unfortunately for Geoff Johns, his talent ended up being eaten away by his success. Promoted to co-editor-in-chief at DC, he became responsible for far too many stories at once and the instigator of many broken promises, like the Seven Kingdoms of Atlantis that were never fully revealed in the comics, or even Batman Earth 1, which, despite its strong influence on Matt Reeves' recent film, ended with a rather mediocre and hasty third volume. Geoff Johns' contribution to the DC Universe, although very recent, have strongly influenced series and films while very often being butchered in the process. If the resurrection of Green Lantern had led to the events Blackest Night and Brightest Day, the resurrection of Flash, who had died to give birth to the modern age, ironically led to the conclusion of that universe through the Flashpoint event. It must be said that Marvel and DC frequently restart their respective universes in order to make them accessible to those who would like to get into superhero comics, and also to keep the characters at the age where we want them to be, which is especially true of younger characters like Robin and Spider-Man. But since this practice has spilled over into American cinema, I wonder if there's anybody learning anything from what I've just explained. So what is Flashpoint? Long story short, Flashpoint is about how Barry Allen wakes up one day in a slightly different reality than the one he's always known. Superman is a prisoner of the government, Batman is not Bruce Wayne but Thomas Wayne, who was sworn to avenge his son's death, Barry's mother is alive, and Barry has lost his speed. As this world descends further and further into chaos due to a war between Wonder Woman's Amazons and Aquaman's Atlanteans, Barry becomes increasingly convinced that it's all the fault of his nemesis, Reverse Flash. But when Barry finally confronts him, Reverse Flash reveals to him what's really happening.
I didn't do any of it. You did. Think, Barry. Isn't there some little thing, some little good deed you might have done?
I saved someone.
Yes.
I saved her. I saved Mom.
That's right.
No. It wouldn't have changed all this. It wouldn't have changed what happened before her murder. Bruce's parents, Clark's Landing.
Oh, but it did. Break the sound barrier and there's a sonic boom. You broke the time barrier, Flash. Time boom. Ripples of distortion radiated out through that point of impact, shifting everything just a tiny bit, but enough.
Barry, who in the meantime has recovered his powers, therefore makes the difficult choice to put reality back in order, even if, for that, his mother must die. Flashpoint is both an epic story that features several important DC characters, and an intimate story that brings Flash back to his origin, which explores his moral flaws and his sense of duty.
I just wanted to save her.
Her hero. How noble. Oh, wait. You didn't stop JFK from getting assassinated, or make sure Hitler stayed in art school. You saved your mommy. You missed her. And in a supreme act of selfishness, shattered history like a rank amateur. Turned the world into a living hell moments away from destruction. And I'm the villain?
Additionally, the reality Flash returns to isn't quite the same as the original, and that served to justify within the DC universe the editorial reboot which we called the New 52. It's therefore not surprising that it was decided to adapt this story on the occasion of the first Flash film, a film which finally allows us to tell his origin story, by which we suspect Warner Brothers of wanting to clean up the fiasco that is the DCEU, and of course of wanting to repeat the success of Spider-Man No Way Home. However, the Flashpoint comic has already been adapted in the third season of the series The Flash produced by CW, and there were already some references to it in the previous seasons. For example, in the second season, we discovered that on Earth 2, Green Arrow is not Oliver Queen, but his father Robert Queen, who survived in place of his son.
The Arrow of Starling City, formerly known as the Hood, has been unmasked as billionaire Robert Queen. Robert was marooned on an island when his boat went down in the Pacific, an accident that ended with the tragic death of his son Oliver.
This echoes the Batman of Thomas Wayne that Flash encounters in Flashpoint. You have to know that in the CW universe, Green Arrow has often served as a pseudo-Batman since the series was strongly inspired by the Dark Knight trilogy. Motivated by the death of his wife, Malcolm Merlyn orchestrated a disaster aimed specifically at the city's poorest neighborhood, like Ra's al Ghul in Batman Begins, while the character of Scarecrow was echoed in both that of Count Vertigo.
Taste of your medicine, Doctor. Enjoy the fruits of your labor.
And Sebastian Blood. An ally from the past like Slade Wilson became an enemy after losing his girlfriend and being disfigured, just like Harvey Dent in The Dark Knight, but by stealing Oliver Queen's company through Isabel Rochev and storming the city as he and his soldiers are made stronger with the Mirakuru, he makes himself more reminiscent of Bane in The Dark Knight Rises, while Isabel Rochev is an obvious echo of Miranda Tate aka Talia al Ghul. We can also find in the series actors who had previously starred in The Dark Knight, such as Chin Han and Michael J. White, and thanks to the fight between Green Arrow and Flash, CW gave us a better Batman vs. Superman than Batman vs. Superman.
Save Martha!
Of course, the CW's Flashpoint makes little reference to the DC Extended Universe, and as a result, the war between the Amazons and the Atlanteans is absent from it. For a more faithful adaptation of the comic, we must turn to the animated film The Flashpoint Paradox, which was used as the starting point for a series of 15 animated films within the DC universe, a universe which concluded when Flash triggered a new Flashpoint to start a new universe. So Flash is really intertwined with the multiverse and the editorial reboots, to the point where characters like Constantine outright ask him to create a new reality when the superheroes are unable to save the world.
You know what you have to do, mate. Clear the board. Start again.
Another Flashpoint.
And the world that investors at Warner Bros. Are desperately trying to save right now is their own butts, because it took them 10 years to realize that Zack Snyder was screwing everything up. If only someone had told them. How about that? Marvel Studios have just started presenting their filmic multiverse. The opportunity is therefore perfect for the investors at Warner Bros., who still think they are in the race against Marvel, to adapt Flashpoint and thus use the multiverse as a pretext to transfer the creative control of DC to James Gunn. To replace Snyder, the investors needed a yes man. That is to say, a director like those usually hired to make Marvel films, who doesn't insist on bringing his personal vision to the screen, but instead does what the investors want him to do. In this case, an adaptation of Flashpoint starring Michael Keaton to ensure a good return on their investment. That's exactly what happened during the production of It, where they replaced Cary Fukunaga with Andy Muschietti, and it made them big bucks. So it made perfect sense for them to rehire Andy Muschietti to execute their plan. To be honest, I don't know if Andy Muschietti can really be considered a yes man. Discovered by Guillermo del Toro, who allowed him to make a long version of his short film Mama, Andy Muschietti has since never had the opportunity to direct a personal project for Hollywood, and his films are fueled by nostalgia and special effects. So, what does his adaptation of Flashpoint look like?